Imagine dedicating years of your life to a dream, investing every ounce of your energy, your time, and your savings, only to watch it crumble in front of you. Everything gone. At 40 years old, you're not just facing failure, you're facing ruin. But what if that wasn't the end of your story? This is the story of Mark Dawson. At 40, he was bankrupt, broken, and hopeless. But within a decade, he became a billionaire, one of the wealthiest and most respected entrepreneurs of his time. How did he do it? This is the comeback story of a lifetime. In his 30s, Mark was living the dream. He had built a successful tech company, one of the fastest-growing startups in his city. He was a rising star, a young entrepreneur with a vision that seemed unstoppable. His company wasn't just about making money. It was about making a difference, creating innovative solutions for people's everyday problems. Mark was on top of the world. He was praised in magazines, invited to conferences, and admired by young entrepreneurs. But behind the scenes, he was taking risks that few people knew about, risks that one by one would lead to his undoing. Then came the economic crash. Within months, Mark's company started bleeding money. Contracts were canceled, investors pulled out, and debts piled up. He tried everything to keep the company afloat. He sold his car, mortgaged his home, even dipped into his children's college funds. But it wasn't enough. One by one, his team members left, some for better opportunities, some simply because they couldn't stay on a sinking ship. And just like that, everything Mark had worked for was gone. He was left with nothing but debt, disappointment, and a sense of failure that he couldn't shake. For weeks, he couldn't sleep. The whispers of failure haunted him every night, every waking hour. Friends and family tried to comfort him, but there were no words that could mend the void inside him. He was broken, and convinced his life was over. At 40, he felt like he was living a nightmare. But here's where Mark's story takes a turn. Because, as dark as things were, he wasn't ready to give up. One morning, as he was sitting in a park, he saw a little boy struggling to fly a kite. The boy kept trying, even after falling, even after the kite crashed repeatedly to the ground. Mark couldn't help but watch, and something clicked. He realized that this child was doing what he himself had forgotten how to do. The boy kept trying, no matter how many times he failed. Mark realized he had two choices: continue living in the shadow of his failure or start over from scratch. With a renewed sense of purpose, he began searching for new opportunities, new ideas, and most importantly, a new perspective. He dove into self-help books, studied successful entrepreneurs who had bounced back from failure, and spent hours learning about industries he had never considered before. It was during this time that he discovered a field he had never paid attention to: renewable energy. The world was changing, moving towards cleaner energy sources, and Mark saw a potential he hadn't seen before. But he also knew he had no experience in this field. So he spent 2 years learning, networking, and building his understanding from the ground up. At 42, with a small loan from a friend and a handful of investors, Mark launched his second company. This time he was wiser, more cautious, but just as driven. The company focused on affordable solar solutions for small businesses and households. And slowly, his new venture began to grow. 5 years later, Mark's company had become one of the most trusted names in renewable energy in his region. But this time, he didn't let success get to his head. He kept innovating, focusing on his mission, and building a company that made a real difference. Then came the big break: a government contract for solar panels in rural areas. It was a multi-million-dollar deal that catapulted his company into national prominence. And just like that, Mark Dawson, the man who had once lost everything, was on his way to becoming a billionaire. At 50, Mark had achieved something incredible. He had not only rebuilt his life, but created something bigger and better than before. And this time, he knew the value of what he had achieved. His story became an inspiration, a testament to resilience and the power of starting over. So, the next time you feel like giving up, remember Mark Dawson. Remember that failure doesn't have to be the end of your story. Sometimes it's just the beginning.